It's that time of the week again. It's time for Chit Chat Across the Pond. This is episode number 823 for October 18th, 2025. And I'm your host, Allison Sheridan. This week, our guest is Adam Engs, the lovely owner and author of always brilliant articles over at tidbits.com. Well, this week, Adam took on a subject I'm guessing is pretty close to maybe 100% of the audience is going to care about, and that's how to tame liquid glass on Apple OS's 26. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Hello, Allison. Nice to be here.
Well, before we get stuck in, this conversation must go hand in hand with Adam's article on Tidbits entitled How to Turn Liquid Glass into a Solid Interface, because everything is screenshotted in there that he's going to talk about today, where he goes through. And we got to talk about the screenshots, Adam, because I'm
many screenshots.
I'm a big old screenshot person. And it's not just that they're beautiful and well framed and everything. It's that you manage to capture it identically. Here's the same thing with this setting, this setting, this setting, and then all the settings combined. And you're doing it on the Mac and on the iPhone and on the Apple Watch. And
even the Apple TV, which was even the hardest.
Oh, yeah. That one's creative.
That one was sort of like, how do you do this? Because I didn't want to do that much about the Apple TV. So
right. You managed to minimize it. But I bow down to your screenshot chops here. This is, and I am a big old screenshot hog. Like one of the things that really surprised me, we're going to talk in, let's see, it was on the iPhone. When you drag down from Notification Center, I never noticed that as you're dragging down, it distorts the letters underneath it of the icons on your home screen. And I never noticed it because I always just do a swipe down. And as soon as I swipe all the way down, everything kind of gets blurry or fuzzy and you don't see that effect. But you managed to capture it partway down in two different screenshots, partway down the exact same way.
In 5 different screenshots, 6 different screenshots.
Oh yeah, you're right. Oh, God.
It's all of them. No, I did. So liquid glass turns out to be kind of a tricky thing to document in static images. And because
it's the blurpy thing you're trying to catch.
Right. I mean, all this stuff goes by quickly. And so when you're trying to like point out a particular thing, you do need to find a static image so you can talk about it. But simultaneously, it's sort of not representative of what people will see. As you say, you didn't even notice this kind of thing, even though it's guaranteeably doing it.
Oh, yeah. Now that I went back and looked at it, it definitely is. Well, you not only had to do that, you had to catch it before somebody else sent you another notification. So you had to catch it 6 times and hope nobody. I mean, did you turn off Wi-Fi or something when that happened?
No, I think it was only a problem at the very end when I was doing reduced motion. And the trick there is you can actually swipe left to remove notifications.
Oh, okay.
So I took one or two out that came in during that time. But yes, there were definitely. It is one of those things where it drives you up the wall when you're doing these kind of multi-screenshot sets because you want them to be the same every time. The Apple Watch was actually the hardest, and I in fact had to punt a few times and I won't say fake the screenshots, but they were not. You'll notice like in the first set of screenshots, the time starts at 11:15 and ends at 11:43.
That's how long it took to do it right?
No, I had to replace the last screenshot. The fourth one.
Okay.
I just at some point I realized what I had done wrong. And so a couple of them had to be tweaked.
Well, that's kind of interesting that it's not keeping. So the iPhone, wait a minute, you're getting different times. I thought it was always 10:20. Is that only on the Mac?
Oh, so it's 9:41 is the special time.
9:41. It's when you're doing video?
I'm not exactly 100% certain when Apple does that. I never get those special times. I think it may be one of those things where Apple is setting that manually, or certain apps will do that for you.
I've seen it when I'm doing screencast online tutorials. So I know I've run into it, but now I can't remember when.
Yeah.
So what tool so you're doing a screenshot holding down the side button and the up?
Yep. Up volume, side and up for the iPhone.
Now I've noticed a bug here is that by default, it throws it immediately into your photos library. but it's supposed to show it to you for a second, and it is supposed to be a full screen preview. Mine immediately dumps it into photos, so I don't ever see it. So I can't even tell it took the screenshot.
Do you get a thumbnail?
So you can toggle it so that it will show you a thumbnail, but by default it doesn't.
Yes. So the full screen is visual intelligence, which I'm writing about now.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Well, that's weird.
Where is that?
Why would that be visual
That's a setting
intelligence?
somewhere. Where did that? Oh, it's in no, not camera.
I think if you search for screenshots, hey, if they could just search their own tool.
I think it's capture.
Screen capture.
Full screen capture.
Previews.
General screen capture. Right. Do you want? And basically, you can turn off or on full screen previews.
So I have full screen previews toggled off, and it does full screen previews, and it puts them right into photos, even though I have it toggled off.
Wait a second. No, a preview is the preview is it's not saving yet.
Right.
So if full screen previews is toggled off, you should get a thumbnail in the lower left corner.
And I should. Yes, I agree. I should.
I mean,
I do not.
I got that. I mean, just took a screenshot. I got that there.
Yeah.
If I do full screen previews, that's basically triggering visual intelligence.
I just did it, and I just did full screen. I've got it toggled off. I just took the screenshot, and it went boom. I saw some little wiggle down in the corner. Anyway, okay, good. You're not plagued by that.
I'm not plagued by that. So that's just a bug.
Yeah. Gosh, I didn't have any of those.
They're real. Yeah.
People who don't believe me. And then, what are you framing them with? Because you've got beautiful frames on them. What app do you use to do that?
I use Federico Vittici's Apple Frames.
Boy, I want to love that. Every time I install it, it works for a little while, and then it starts to fail on me. It's fragile, and I have to reinstall it.
It is brittle. The latest version, although this is the first time ever, it survived an iOS upgrade. So that's never happened to me before. Every time it's broken horribly in iOS upgrades.
Okay.
Whatever the current version is. But what I love about it is that is not so much the framing. The framing you can do in a bunch of different things, but the framing and combining. So with these, I would basically just select two photos in the Photos app, do the share, hit Apple Frames. And then I modify it slightly so that it gives me a JPEG file on my desktop as the top option. So I just tap a button and then poof on my Mac, I end up with the desktop.
So it's creating two side by side simultaneously. Those aren't two separate images in a figure or something, or in a div or something weird.
Right, precisely.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they're literally two screenshots that it combines into one, exactly the same way every time.
Cool.
And so that's just so much, and the same thing with the Apple Watch ones. Actually, those are that's 4 images combined by Apple Frames.
Okay,
and it will do
really worth it.
I won't say it'll do any number. It'll do at least 2. It'll do 2. It'll do 3. Once you're over, I think it'll do 4. But once you're at 4 iPhone images, they're not readable really.
Sure.
So it's too many to.
Yeah,
combine.
2 is real nice. All right. Well,
so yeah,
this
I'm
is
very fond of
this
2.
is a person who works in your exact same space, just wanting to know how you did it, and that's not what everybody came here to hear. They probably want to know, how do you turn liquid glass into a solid interface? Which OS do you want to start with?
Well, let's just start at the top. Go for the Mac, because that's the one I think where, in some ways, the Mac is where it matters the most. So. Several people have commented, and I think this is correct, that liquid glass really feels like it was designed for the iPhone and iPad. And while Apple has done many of the same things on the Mac, it's a little less successful, and I think it's more important to fiddle with it on the Mac so that it looks and works the way you want it to. Whereas on the iPhone and iPad, you probably just go with it and see what you think at first. Anyway,
I do know someone who was gonna buy a new iPhone and had to run out of the store basically to vomit. She was so overwhelmed by the interface. It really physically upset her stomach, the movement and everything.
Should definitely a candidate for, reduced motion then
Yeah,
probably.
I think she's reasonably bright, and, she did turn a bunch of stuff off, but it was just not for her, so I don't know what's gonna happen in the long run, but no new
Mm,
phone for her.
yeah,
But yeah, it's
yeah.
so the way what I like about what you did here was the settings changes that you make, you show us what each one does and independently and then combined, but the answer might be different depending on which OS you're on.
Yes. Yes, that and they are. At the very end of the article, I actually have, sort of what I prefer,
Mhm.
and, it's actually different for all of them. That,
That's really interesting.
the that for the Mac, I really believe the most important one is reduced transparency. And the reason for that is a couple of things. Probably the big one is I believe strongly that the menu bar should be a different color. That it should be one of those things where you know where to look, all your icons, in that menu bar should stand out. All the words should be really visible. And, you know, uh, obviously everyone's different in terms of what they put on their wallpaper, but, at various times I often have wallpapers that change.
Mhm.
I kind of like wallpapers that change. And so, like, I don't want to ever have to be in a situation where suddenly I can't really quite pick out, one of those silly little menu bar icons because it's above some weird
They're
background.
already hard to tell apart since they've all gone
They
monochrome. I
are.
mean, it used to be nice when you
Yeah,
could
they're
see
all.
the color of them.
I mean, some of mine are
Yeah, I have a
color, but,
couple.
like Zoom is color, but, just a couple of them. Dropbox has a little badgy thing, I have a little app called Simon, which is a monitoring app, that's color, but most of the rest are black and white.
Right, so that doesn't
Um,
help.
no, it
So
doesn't. So just in general, like, though having the menu bar be its own thing, I I feel somewhat strongly about from my usability standpoint. Yeah, yes, I know where it is, but I wanna read it.
we jumped in a little bit here, where we're, changing these things is system settings, accessibility, display. Is everything in all in there?
Yes.
On
Um Everything is in system settings, accessibility. There is one other,
oh,
control,
motion is gonna
that's
be
not in
elsewhere, yeah.
display, in motion, right. That's the reduce motion one. Um, so, yeah, but reduce transparency, aside from giving you the opaque menu bar, it also eliminates, well, frankly, the transparency behind windows. And this is really important because we were just talking about screenshots. So if I'm taking a screenshot for an article, I want it to be, kind of generic. I don't want it to look like whatever background I happen to have up at that moment. And there's a definite bleed through on these things. So, like, Spotlight's a good example. If you take a screenshot of the new Spotlight interface, man, do you get a lot of bleed through.
Oh,
It actually
yeah.
changes color,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of an
I've
issue.
had trouble finding Spotlight. Like, I know I just launched it, like, on the screen. It's
Oh, really? Huh.
without
It
this
moves
reduced
around on you?
contrast, turned on.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So right, because it's just I mean, you can see, like, in my examples, like, the widgets also, they're barely visible. I mean, they're see-through, and, there really are that kinda Iron Man glass interface, where, Tony Stark is, drawing things on a on a clear pane of glass. And so I'm not wild about that as a kind of usability thing. And so reduced transparency brings a lot of that down. It makes everything, hover above whatever that background is. Oh, the other thing I was gonna say about the screenshots, because a lot of the times I really do have my wallpapers change. Imagine I'm writing an article and, I take a screenshot at time A and it's one color, but and then my background changes and I take another screenshot. Well, now it looks completely different. One's blue, one's green, like, it's just not okay. And so so reduced transparency gets rid of that so that your windows just stay, the light gray that they always are.
I've noticed that another thing with, it's another screenshot taking problem, but that the edges of windows don't show up when you take screenshots with macOS. So if you take like a screenshot of
Mhm.
system settings,
Yeah.
it won't have an edge. It'll just bleed white into the white paper.
Yes, that's always the case, and it's annoying as all get out, and I have multiple ways of bordering screenshots because of that.
Okay, reduced contrast is not or increased con what
Reduced
did we just say?
transparency will
Increased
not help with
contrast.
that.
That doesn't fix
Yeah.
that problem. Okay, cool.
Increased contrast might fix that problem. I actually haven't tried that because I think increased contrast looks just kinda way too horsey.
Oh, I'm
You know,
sorry. I've been meaning I'm gonna do this throughout the whole article. I'm gonna get them backwards. I meant reduced transparency. Does that fix
right.
it?
No, it does not.
Okay, great,
Um,
great. Good to know.
yeah. Yeah, reduced transparency, does not do anything with your edges, and so so people can get a feel for this, if you take a screenshot of almost any window, like system settings, basically, there will be no edge.
Yeah,
It'll
just
just be white, and
disappears.
there's actually sort of 2 ways to do that, in screenshots again. Um, by default, all screenshots on the Mac have shadows, and that takes
Mhm.
care of it. But Apple uses huge shadows to make
I'm
them,
actually
like,
writing an
blend
article
really
on
well.
this exact subject. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like an
And
inch
right,
border of
it's
shadow
it's
on it.
just massive. And so everyone who does professional level screenshots does not take it, with those shadows because 'cause they're way too big. It just
Mhm.
creates too much white space in your layout. So you turn off shadows, which you can do by pressing the Option key, or there's a way of, doing it,
Defaults right.
toggling it. Um, and so that it's, option so that it's no shadows by default, and then the Option key puts them back on. And so you take a no shadow screenshot, and then you border it in some other way. And as I said, I've got a couple of different ways of doing that that I've built over the years.
Mhm.
The one I'm using now, I is either there's an app called Retro Batch,
Yeah.
which is pretty
Yeah.
cool. Acorn, the Acorn guy. No, not Acorn. Yeah, Flying
It
Meat,
is.
Acorn, yeah.
Yeah, flying meat.
And and then the other one is Screen Float, which is a screenshot utility. Just added a feature, kind of for me, I think, where basically if you do a certain thing when you export an image, a screenshot from that, it borders it for you.
Cool,
And
cool.
so those are
Like I
both
said, I'm
helpful.
writing that up right now. The same, I've been
Yeah.
chatting with folks on Mastodon about this exact same problem. Okay, so
Yeah, it's
transparency doesn't help, but I do have to say, my instant reaction when I hit reduce transparency was, "Ah."
yeah.
It's like a visceral reaction to it. I just kinda I felt like, I don't know, it was very pleasing when I
Yes.
turned
Yeah,
on
reduced
reduced
transparency just
transparency.
works for me. And I
Mhm.
think it's a little bit of that, like, we've been using the Mac for so long that it's just a little bit hard to make that visual jump. And similarly, increased contrast, which is the next one, increased contrast also on the Mac, but not nowhere else, requires reduced transparency. You can't turn on increased contrast separately from reduced transparency on the Mac. And what that does is it outlines nearly all the interface elements. They stand out much more strongly. It also changes some of Apple's really light colors, so like the blue and the green in messages, blue bubble friends, green bubble friends, those become much darker,
Hmm.
those
Okay.
colors. And
I
so
find the outlining of everything really
it's yeah,
repulsive.
it's horsey. I mean, it's just ugly, frankly.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I can see why they do it, and I think this is a setting that really belongs in accessibility. This
Yeah.
is something where if
If
you
you
have
need
certain
this,
kinds of visual issues, this is gonna be huge because it gives you nice clean lines.
right. But
But
where reduced transparency makes it more pleasing, I think increased
yeah.
contrast makes it much less pleasing.
Yes, I agree. So so now the funny thing, literally while I was writing this article, it turns out that someone discovered there's a hidden defaults write command that will turn off liquid glass entirely.
On the
And
Mac,
so we
that's
thought,
crazy.
yeah, and we thought, oh, well, that's kind of cool. Let's see how that works.
So before we go any
It's
further, defaults right is a terminal command that lets you change the default user settings that are buried under the hood. Turning off the drop shadow, you do with the defaults right.
they have no a lot of this stuff has no interface whatsoever.
Mhm.
Like there is no other way to do these settings. These are settings basically for Apple's developers. is what it comes down to. And because they're public, or they can be discovered anyway,
Mhm.
people find them and share them around. So I thought, well, this is getting, coverage. I should check this out. So I actually redid all I did the same 3 screenshots, kind of, plain, reduced transparency, and then both reduced transparency and increased contrast. And it's a nice idea, and you can see the changes that it makes. It like, the corners aren't as rounded.
You're saying
Um,
disabling
Liquid glass.
liquid glass
Yeah.
altogether now. Okay.
Yeah, it's a nice idea. But it changes more than you'd expect, actually. Like, the sidebar in system settings no longer hovers above stuff. Like, it's just a part of the window again, and the search field no longer hovers above stuff. So so in that sense, it works well. The problem is that this is clearly not something Apple intends anyone to do, and so, um, large chunks of the interface don't actually work right. So, like, when you click one of those menu bar icons on the right side of the screen, anything you've added, or, control center, those kinds of stuff, the menus don't actually appear correctly. They're
Oh.
they have no background, so you just see, like, the menu commands sort of hovering over your background, over your wallpaper.
Hmm.
Um, it's just, there's a number of things that are slightly wrong, and yeah, I can't recommend it, and it gets even worse if you turn on reduced transparency.
Oh, so you applied that on top of that?
Yes.
Oh, yuck.
Yeah, because reduced transparency has been around forever. Like, this is not a new thing. I use reduced transparency. I've been using it for years to get my screenshots to be right. And so, and just turning off liquid glass doesn't actually turn off transparency. So you might want to do that as well. And when you do that, control center is completely borked. I mean, it's
Oh,
bad.
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, like the control center controls just sort of weirdly hover. You can't, they're just sort of, like, put there, like, there's no background to them. There's no sense that they each have their own button space or anything.
Oh.
You literally just see, like, the words and the controls kind of hovering weirdly in space.
Oh, I see
And
it now,
it
yeah.
Yeah, it's not
With
good.
liquid glass turned off, they still at least have, like, a little grayish, well,
Yeah.
translucent border around the button areas, but
Yeah,
when
it's sort of a
you
lozenge, right.
yeah, then when you add reduced transparency to liquid glass off, now they're just floating words and buttons and yeah, that no, that doesn't work at all.
And the same,
So
the
nice
dock
idea.
also loses its thing. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, as it's a nice idea. It was probably there for testing, frankly, and so Apple left it in. I cannot imagine that it will stick around for long. And the fact that it's as broken as it is says to me that, this is something that, Apple's gonna Apple's not gonna fix in any way, shape, or form. They have no incentive to do this. So all that said, there is one other thing you can do that might be worth doing, and I played with it very briefly, but it was sort of not worth the effort for most part for me, which is you could turn liquid gloss off per app.
Oh, okay.
So again, another one of those defaults right commands, that I have in the article. You have to figure out what the app's bundle identifier is. There's a way I explain how to do that, and then you can turn off liquid glass for just that app. How much of a help this is, I don't know. And obviously every app is going to be different. My suspicion is it will only work with Apple apps. I did not test this significantly because I don't really think it's a solution to much of anything. But hey, if you want to play,
I do have to give you chops here, though. I didn't know you could find the bundle identifier. What he's talking about is when you do defaults right, you have to put in something like com.apple.preview. That's what you have to put in. But the way to get to that is to control click on an app, show package contents, and then search content/info.plist for the CF bundle of identifier key. I love this. I'm gonna come back to this just for that piece. That's fantastic.
I have to admit, I asked ChatGPT. I mean,
Ah,
like,
okay.
I knew of ways that I could get something close to it, but I didn't know if there was, like, a guaranteed way of doing it, and I was like, "Oh, that's it. Okay, yeah."
Okay, that's really funny. That's awesome. So if you really are a control freak, you could maybe wanna do this.
Yeah, I mean, someone wrote to me and said that he turned it off and then he rebooted and I think he sort of forgot that he'd turned Liquid Glass off,
Oh,
and then stuff was just breaking, and it was just weird for him, and he was just freaking out, like his machine was broken, he was gonna have to reinstall macOS and whatnot, and then he remembered that he'd turned off Liquid Glass, and he turned it back on and everything was okay. Uh, I'm really I mean, as I said, people should be feel totally free to play with this, but I really don't think it's a solution to anything. And
no.
you should just play with it and turn it back on and move on with your life.
Or if you play with it, make a note of how you did it so you can remember which false to turn to true or vice versa.
Yes, precisely.
Take good notes. All right, well, what about the, motion problems like what Kaylee has with the iPhone, but in macOS, is that available?
I have to admit, I don't know a lot about like what the physiological issues are that generate this. But yes, some people basically certain kinds of interface motion makes them horribly nauseous. And
Mhm.
so Apple's again long had this system settings, accessibility, motion, reduce motion switch. And it's a little hard for someone like me who does not have this problem to quite know what it does. Um, and so, like, if you
Interesting.
the main place I can see it is when you go into full screen mode, things kind of expand in, and when reduce motion is turned off, it becomes a crossfade. I don't again, I don't quite know I don't know enough about the condition to really know kind of how big a deal that is. Um, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference for liquid glass on the Mac.
Okay,
It does in iOS, and which we'll talk about in a minute, which is sort of odd, but it's worth playing with. So particularly if you find I mean, it's possible liquid glass will trigger people in ways that previously the macOS interface did not. So even if reduced motion wasn't necessary for you before, it might be now. It's an easy
right.
thing to test.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I just toggled on and off and didn't notice anything, but that could be because there's not things that bother us.
Yeah, and
And it's
I
not as
think
blurpy
there's
as the iPhone.
it's not as blurpy, and I think it used to do things like the Genie effect when you minimize an app. I think it used to turn that off, and I don't think it does anymore.
You know, that's exactly what I tested, and I didn't see the genie effect with or without it, so maybe I toggled that off someplace else.
Yeah, okay, so you might have killed that in a different way, so,
Yeah.
um, but so yeah,
Okay.
so there's not that much you can do in macOS is what it comes down to. You can, and I would argue should, turn on reduced transparency. You can turn on increased contrast, not worth the effort in most cases, and you can play with turning liquid glass off, yeah, the command line, but, don't treat it as a solution to much of anything.
Okay. All right, and I think one thing that's really good is throughout this, you keep saying, "Do what makes it work for you,"
Yeah.
right? Because
So,
what
I
Adam likes
forget
is not necessarily what everybody would need.
I yeah, and I can't remember. I think I wrote books about iPhoto way back in the day, and at some point, I'm not a photography person as we've discussed, but at some point I was writing about editing, and so I actually did a fair amount of research into like I was writing about doing color editing on photos, and so I did some research into gamuts and things like that, and it became intensely clear to me that no two people see the same thing. It's
What
just
is
like
that dress? Is it gold and white or black and
oh,
blue?
yeah. I mean, my wife and I actually disagree on what blue and green are. I think
Hmm.
I'm I think my view of what's blue is more commonly agreed upon by other people, but how can I say she's wrong? I mean, it's what
Well,
she
and
sees.
color blindness is 8 times more likely in men than women. I'm just saying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I have a friend who's fairly I won't say profoundly red green colorblind, but it's a big deal for him. Like
Mhm.
he's a trail runner, and you can't put if people use flags that are orange, he's like, "Oh, please," like, they don't look like anything to me. They look like leaves, not helpful.
I have a friend
So
whose dog used to hide from him in the grass. It was a brown dog, and it could hide in the green grass, and he couldn't see the dog.
yeah, yeah. So it's all of this stuff, and there's a turn, and it turns out, like with the motion stuff, and and contrast and all that, everyone's eyes have work differently. So it is
Mhm.
purely always go through all these things and look and see what you think of it, not what I did. I mean, I will give what I believe is a relatively middle of the road recommendation, but
Right.
just
But I
from what I
think what you
gather,
did
I have
here
normalish eyes.
what I think you did here was really important, though, like, especially when you talked about the turning off liquid glass altogether, is I might not have realized all of the other repercussions of doing it, that it
Yeah.
fixed these things over here, and I might have not noticed, and then all of a sudden after a while going, "Wait, why does that look so stupid?" So, I think knowing what the changes are through your article is really good. But let's take on, iOS 26 because that's where most people
Yeah.
are probably
Okay.
experiencing it.
So reduce transparency. So in iOS, you want to talk about screenshots? I can do something different with iOS, which is that I can take two screenshots and put them side by side because two
Mhm,
screenshots in an iPhone look really good next to each other. And
mhm,
so, from my article, basically, the left hand one is always the unadorned, just plain old default settings, and then the right one says, "Oh, what does it look like you've turned on right reduce transparency?" And so you
mhm,
can just go look left, right, and go, "Wow, that's a lot more readable."
mhm.
So reduced transparency goes a long way to making things more readable, particularly when you have something like notifications that pop up over all sorts of other stuff. And so that's a really big win. Um, the screen that I chose to use for these screenshots, because it demonstrated a lot of the problems, was Notification Center. So you're on your home screen, you can see all your icons and widgets and stuff, and then you start pulling down from the upper left, and you can, if you're like Allison, just like swipe down quickly and it takes over the whole screen. It's basically a lock screen again at that point.
Mhm.
Or you can just pause. And that's what I did, is I paused, 3/4 of the way down and for each of these screenshots. And so that gets you a lot of, oh, the notifications are just hovering over my background and my icons. And,
And
I can
completely
see,
unreadable.
yeah, completely unreadable. I can see the flashlight button and the camera button that are, that are notification center and things like that. So it gives you a good feel for that kind of stuff. Um, it, as we were sort of saying before, it is a little deceptive because you probably wouldn't stop here. You would
Mhm.
probably go all the way and then you get a different look. So, but yeah, I got to show something. So yeah, reduced
I
transparency
like it.
helps a great deal.
Yeah, that is I look at the left screenshot and I go, "Bad." I look at the right one, "Good." That one's
Yeah,
not real
right.
hard to pick out.
No, it's really not. So interestingly, in iOS and iPadOS, increased contrast and reduced transparency are independent. So you can increase if you switch reduce transparency off and increase contrast. Um, it's interesting because it doesn't go as far as reduced transparency does in terms of making things readable. It doesn't take over all the backgrounds, but it helps a lot. I mean, it's sort of this in between level. And
It's
so
it's
it
interesting
keeps
in the
some of it.
screenshot that you showed, again, with notification center partway down, on the stock installation of, iOS 26, everything is this floating lozenge with a very
Yeah.
undefined border. In the one where you've got increased contrast turned on, the first 2 boxes have a tiny white border on them, so they're much more readable, but the ones that are not fully
Oh, you're right. Look at
up
that.
are not bordered. So 2 have borders, but
I
the
think
3rd
they
one doesn't.
are. I think they are just not as bordered.
Maybe. Yeah,
I think there's just a little bit I
and
think
they're
there's a
slightly
little
more
again,
opaque.
they're just slightly more opaque because again, it's increasing
Yeah,
contrast, so it's
but
trying to
it's
get make the
different.
brights brighter and the darks darker.
Yeah, that's certainly
Um,
better than I would say
yeah,
increased contrast by itself is a little better in that view.
yeah, yeah. No, it's I mean, basically, if liquid glass default is unreadable, just to argue, increased contrast makes it a little bit better. Reduced transparency makes it better yet, and then you can combine them. And when you combine them, things pop. I mean, it becomes much easier to read. And so that would
And
be
not
like
nearly as
the
ugly as
ultimate.
it is on the Mac.
It's not as bad. I mean, it's a little bit horseier still, but not nearly as bad. And you actually can go one step further because there's yet another command, another setting on iOS called bold text, which does exactly what you'd expect. It just bolds all the text. And again, it's sort of like increased contrast. It makes things just a little bit easier to read. And then you can combine all of them. And when you do that, it's actually pretty good. I mean, it's more, as I sort of said in the article, it's more than I need, but I know people who would be turning those all on and be very happy.
Yeah, in your screenshot, gonna get it right, increased contrast, I have to read every time to say it
Yeah.
correctly. In your screenshot of Notification Center, I think increased contrast looks pretty good, but I just went into Mail with it on, and it's pretty horsey again. That
Right.
it's in your face. This is a
Yeah.
lozenge with a line around it. You know, it might be because part of it might be you're in dark mode, and I tend to be in light mode, and in light mode, it's a black
This
border.
is all light. This is all light mode. I
It
think dark
is?
mode is yeah. Dark mode is abominable. I don't ever use it.
Oh, interesting. Those they your notification center thing looks like dark mode, but I guess it is dark, right? But y
It's remember it's because it's slightly darkening the background.
Mhm. Okay.
Because that's not my thing. And then when you go into reduced transparency, that darkens the background of all the notifications. So that's why you think it's in dark mode, I think.
Okay. All right.
So
Well, I'm
that was
still
the
not a
trick.
fan of increased contrast.
No, no,
But like you said, we get
it's
to
a
choose.
yeah. So like I said, I know someone who has some fairly significant visual issues.
Mhm.
Like she can barely drive. And that's kind of one of those situations where if you have that level of visual issue, you're taking every option you can get.
Sure,
And
sure.
so for her, reduced transparency, increase in bold text, and probably increasing size. I didn't really
Right.
talk about that. You can do that in accessibility as well. It's not related to liquid glass in any way, so it's not. I didn't cover it, but yeah, you can do a lot of these tweaks. Now, there is one other one in iOS, which is interesting, which is reduce motion. And although it has various different effects, and it actually I found it a little jarring, to have it on. But one thing I was surprised about is in my screenshots, the notification center pane of glass that comes down, it's sort of you can think of it as being curved on the edge, and so whenever it goes over something, as it goes over, it distorts the text underneath it and the
Mhm.
icons. And so reduced motion eliminates that distortion,
Oh, interesting.
which
Okay.
is just a little kinda curious, but it makes sense if you think about it, because if you're like your friend who makes her nauseous to see this kind of stuff, basically, that pane of notification center glass that kinda slides down, now it's just pure, straight, clear glass that you can see through. So there's
Okay,
none of
instead
that.
of having a beveled edge, a rounded edge
Right,
to distort it,
right.
it's not a
To make yeah,
lens.
yeah, and it makes and also the it further blurs the background, reduced
Oh,
motion
yeah, it
does.
does.
Yeah, which is kinda interesting. Basically, I think the reason is that way the sense that something is moving over something else is reduced.
This makes me
So
wanna turn on reduce motion and increase transpar or decrease transparency, those 2 things.
Yes, right. Reduce motion, reduce transparency. So yeah, so
Okay.
those are. I mean, reduce motion. I think you'll find if you don't need it, you'll find some of the weird swipe like transitions between apps and swipes and things like that won't feel right. They'll feel kind of choppy.
Right. Okay.
So, but all that said, again, play with what you can. So And then we get into there's a couple of other labels settings I just wanted to show people in here that not really related to liquid glass, but they are related to making things visual, look better visually. One was, of course, larger text. There's button shapes, which will get put outlines around certain buttons that are otherwise just text, maybe underline them. And then there's the off and on labels, which you uh, reasonably enough, thought might have been a typo because, in fact, I was using the pipe character for on
A
an
circle.
capital O for a circle for off. I did
Yeah, I
not
don't even
look
think
for
it's
the
an O.
appropriate. It's an
Yeah,
O. It's an
what
O.
he wrote was a pipe for on and a circle for off, but when that's written, it looks like a I, and I was like,
Yes.
but I'm really glad what I wrote to Adam was, "You don't make typos, so I don't understand what is this?" I was really happy to
And
find out it wasn't a typo.
yeah, no, it was like because I was thinking of it as I'd forgotten that it was called a pipe. I was calling it a bar, and I was thinking like, but it's not. I mean, it's not an I. I literally didn't even think about it because it's not
Mhm.
an I. I wasn't
Right.
typing I. I was typing some other weird character. So,
Uh-huh.
so yeah. So until you mentioned that, I'm like, oh right, okay, I see. I see what she's doing. But one of the interesting things you can see in in these screenshots, actually, is because I have increased contrast turned on, the green of the switches is wrong.
Wrong? Just
It's just
different?
it's just well, that's what I mean. It's different, but it's like it will feel wrong to anyone who is not used to this. It's a
Okay.
very different green. And I have had people on occasion, people have said like, why do I see a different green than everyone else does?" And
Oh,
I'm like, "Oh,
okay.
because you have increased contrast turned on." They often, like, someone turned it on, or they turned it on years ago and had no idea, that kind of thing. They usually don't care, but they're just curious, like, "Why are my colors different?"
I
And that's increased contrast does that.
I'm glad you brought up, button shapes because that's one that doesn't have this dramatic effect on everything. It's sorta like things that don't look like buttons become buttons because it's the knowledge of it being a button that makes it look like a button with that turned on.
Yeah. And that one's hard to find examples of.
I think
Um,
the word
I think
back is a classic example, right?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I think there was some in photos I saw too.
Mm,
So I played with it for a while, but again, it's a subtle enough one that there's no harm in turning it on and see if you notice, and if you turn it off, you see if you notice again. So, but I mean, even you can even see like those links, like what's new in display and text size. The Apple has these little. They're basically hot links. It's hot link text. It's blue text, and those are not buttons. So even turning on button shapes does not put a circle or put an
oh,
outline
really?
around those.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. So it's a little funky, no question. But if people have trouble identifying it.
Cool. Alright,
So
well, time to find out what
watchOS,
happens in the watch.
yeah. So I have to say, liquid glass in the watch is
Not as
probably the
bad?
least troubling. Yeah, because it's not bad. Because the fact of the matter is, there's so little that can happen on the watch screen that Apple really couldn't go nuts with it. I mean, the screen is just small, and so if they did too much, it would become unreadable very, very quickly. So what I did here was I took 4 screenshots, trying to show different aspects of things, going from the main screen. I chose the photo screen. Obviously, there's what? There's got to be like 100 watch faces now. I don't know how many watch
Oh
faces there are.
oh, so there's a
So
photo's face is what you're talking about,
yes, it's a
right?
photo's face.
Okay.
I will admit, I love the photos face, just like I love the photos lock screen. And it was when Apple introduced it last in iOS 18, um, it was the thing that finally made me switch from modular. I've
Really?
always used modular.
Yeah.
I'd try something, I'd always come back to modular, but photos, I just love photos. So, um,
So you put in 4 screenshots representing the default liquid glass settings that sort of show off what
right.
happens on
So
some.
yeah, so the photos face, I swiped down to show a notification.
Mhm.
I pressed the side button to show control center, and I swiped up to show smart stack, which just happened to have a couple of a couple of icons on it.
Okay.
So you can see that, and then I did, okay, let's turn on reduce transparency, and whoa, it does exactly what it says. It reduces the transparency, and so like the notification sun is no longer hovering over everything. Control center is no longer hovering over anything. Smart stack, you can't see the photo face through anything. It's actually, it's much more readable. I will say it's less attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah, the background is just now sort of grayish, brownish in my example.
Where on the other devices, reduced transparency really does reduce. I would call this remove transparency.
Yes, yes, that is exactly it. It eliminates transparency almost
Right.
completely. Um, so
Which, if
now
it bugs
if you
you, it's
yeah,
perfect.
yeah. So increased contrast actually, is the one I like the best, because it put the notification over a black background, um, and it kind of, did what it always does in terms of making the brights brighter and the darks darker for Control Center and Smart Stack, but it left just a little bit of the hint of transparency. So those two,
Hmm.
Control Center and Smart Stack, do feel like they're hovering over the image just a little bit.
It's so
So
interesting that we've been using the word horsey, and I don't know why, but uh, wherever it's our word now, increased contrast on the other devices was pretty ugly, but here
yeah,
this is actually prettier. It's got a
yeah,
little more style than reduced transparency.
yep, yep.
Huh.
It is just fascinating. Similarly, we have bold text as an independent option, and it too helps a little bit.
Mhm.
It's
A
the
little more
only one that
subtle.
makes a difference on the photo's face. Uh, Increases the size of the date and the temperature in my complications,
Okay.
but still without either increased contrast or reduced transparency, it's still the notification is still a little hard to read. And
Yeah.
then you combine them all, and you know, honestly, combining them all, it's more readable than if you don't have bold text, but I don't think the bold text is that big a win.
Right. It's kind of bland when you get to
Yeah.
that. When you add
Yeah.
slap them all together.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's sort of like
Okay.
overdoing it a little bit. So, um, you can also increase text size in watchOS, and there's also reduce motion switch, but I couldn't figure out what it did.
You couldn't
I was
ever
not
see
able to
it
find.
change anything?
Yeah, I was not able to find anything.
Okay.
Um, so then I had to actually update my Apple TV to get tvOS 26. Like this is, what, 2.5, 3 weeks later, it still hadn't updated itself.
Oh, interesting. I
So
wonder if
so
mine has, 'cause when I got to this part of the article, I was like, "Do I even remember anything changing?" I wonder if mine haven't.
I
There's
I'm
like
betting
5
it
of them
hasn't.
here.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And this is partly like, I was like admitting to a distinct level of apathy when it comes to liquid glass and tvOS. Um, I mean, part of the problem is tvOS is sort of it's its own interface. Like it's not, you don't really work in tvOS. You just find your show and start watching it, right?
Mhm.
Um, so I didn't find that liquid glass made basically any difference at all, really. Um, and that's especially true because liquid glass by initially only applies to the base operating system and to Apple's apps. So if you're in Netflix app, or I have Amazon Prime or PBS or Acorn or whatever, those don't do it. You don't see any liquid glass effects in those at all. So all of
Okay.
this is a little bit interpretive in that regard. Like, okay, does it make a difference?
So
And
there
yeah.
is one that, actually, I gotta make sure I'm not gonna snake what you were talking about. No, 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 no. Yeah, no, I don't. So there's a thing called focus style, and, under increased, contrast, and actually I can
Oh,
see in one of your
yeah.
screenshots, but focus style, what it does is it puts a little border around the thing that you have selected. So, how, like, you're looking at a bunch of shows and you have to wiggle back and forth to figure out which one
Oh.
you're on? It
One
puts
of
just a
them,
very
yeah.
fine border.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah,
recommend that one.
that's not new though?
No, it looks like it's in
Okay.
a different place. In your screenshot, it shows on display, it's right under reduced transparency. It used to be
Yeah.
inside increased contrast.
Oh,
and
interesting,
then
okay.
reduce transparency.
Interesting.
All right.
Yeah, so what I chose to do for tvOS was, I took a screenshot and interestingly, the way you take screenshots of the Apple TV, um, is you use QuickTime Player, and you do record movie, and then you point it and then you can select your Apple TV as the source,
As long
and
and it's black if you
it
choose any content.
right, as long as you're not choosing content, you're fine. It
Right.
will refuse to take screenshots of actual movies and TV shows,
Not even
but
Fitness Plus. That turns
no,
black too.
really?
Yeah.
I
Well,
haven't
you can
tried
see
Fitness
why.
First.
That's something they don't want
Yeah,
you selling or making free.
yeah, right. So in any event, so I
There's
took
a
a
lot of money in
screenshot of the
that.
TV app, of the kind of the main interface, whatever that's called, and then of the settings app showing the settings that I was working on. And then I used, CleanShot actually, which is another screenshot,
Mhm.
utility to
Screenshot X.
combine them to put the main one sort of over the other 2, so I was just, like, showing certain things. And just like with the Apple TV or the macOS ones, the real utility of this is if you download them all, you can bring them up, use them, show them quick look, and then just use arrow keys to like switch between them. And
By
so
download them
one
all,
will
he
just
means all of his screenshots. So you can go
right down,
A,
yeah,
B,
download
A,
the
B.
screenshots. Yeah, and it's a really nice way to just flip between before after, like in the eye doctor, and see which one you like better.
I've noticed in your screenshots, if I tap on them in Safari, I get a little magnifying glass too, so I can make it
Yeah,
bigger or
yeah.
embiggen it, as Bart says.
Embiggen it, yes. And once you've embiggened it, you can, I think you can actually right click on it and download it. You either I think it doesn't have to be big or little. So, so in any event, so yeah, so the settings, so that we have the same settings here, right? Reduce transparency, increase contrast, and bold text. And I go through what they do, and they do basically what they do in other operating systems, but reduced transparency doesn't really make much difference.
Mm-mm. No, it's really hard
Increased
to tell the difference.
contrast makes a little bit more difference, except for the fact that what it does is like in settings, we have these really kind of light gray headings over the controls, and it makes those brighter, so they're a little harder to see the difference.
Oh, okay.
And then bold text, I just hate. I think bold text on tvOS looks terrible. Um, so it's not a very it's not maybe it's like my possibly even my TV is not high enough resolution or something. It just looks muddy to me. So, and then I put them all together, and yeah, it's easier to it somehow like stands out more, but realistically, I didn't see it making much of a benefit at all.
It's fascinating how different the effects are. Some are better on one OS than the other, and
Yeah.
some you can barely see the difference.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
really
I mean,
interesting.
they always do the same thing, but they really don't. But they really do not have the same level of effect in each case. And once again, tvOS has a reduce motion option, and I couldn't figure out what it did. But while I was playing it, I found the ultimate Apple TV setting of all time, which is the ability to turn off autoplay video previews. I cannot
Nothing to
tell
do
you
with
how
this
much.
subject, but you were poking around and found it?
Like, well, there it is. Turn all those freaking things off. Can I tell you how much I hate it when I'm like just like browsing through TV shows trying to find something to watch and I pause for a little too long and it starts playing the damn thing.
I think, in
Ugh.
this world today, we're very divisive on many, many subjects, but I think we should do polls where we ask questions like, do you like autoplay videos? Yes or no? I guarantee you will get nobody saying yes. We can unite on this topic, if nothing else.
Oh, oh, it's just like, like it's usually like I'm like I'll be reading the description or something like that, and then it will start like moving and talking at me, and I'm like, stop it, go
Never, never,
away.
ever, ever, ever do we want this. Ever. All right. Well, you
Uh,
close this up with recommendations. If you don't want to go through all these settings and try them on your own, here's Adam's settings.
yeah, yeah. So, macOS Easy. Use reduced transparency. I think it's a win. It doesn't hurt much of anything. So like I don't think if you turn on reduced transparency, you'll think, oh, this looks kind of weird here. Now, in iOS 26 and iPadOS 26, I recommend starting with the default and seeing
Hmm.
how you do. Turn on reduced transparency if you don't like it, if you don't like the default. And the problem there is that you will find some toolbars, like at the top and bottoms of apps, which will look huge. Because what Apple
Really?
has done is they have basically made a big toolbar because they're expecting you to see stuff under it. And
Hum
so,
me another bar on what you mean by toolbar. There aren't usually toolbars in iOS.
um, let's see.
Well,
Let
I
me
guess, I
have
mean, I'm looking at mail. I've got all inboxes select and a three-dot menu at the top. Is that what you mean?
I don't use mail. Let me check.
Or you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
give me
Okay. So yeah, in mail you've got the filter button and the search and all that. So now go turn on reduce transparency, accessibility,
Hmm.
accessibility, display, reduce
Reduce
transparency. Okay.
transparency?
Now when you switch back to mail, that toolbar at the bottom looks horsey.
Oh, at the bottom. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I insisted on looking at the top.
Oh, so at the top it's the same thing except for you have to scroll,
Huh. I don't
right?
find it that horsey.
So it's so at the bottom, you've got like a quarter inch of white space,
Mhm.
which is where your whatever that's like so you can swipe left and right. And then it's cut off very tightly above the search field and the
Yeah, it's a
buttons.
distinct line.
It's a distinct line when they're really and whereas when you have accessibility, when you have reduced transparency turned off, um that those sort of hover nicely and you can see everything behind them.
Okay, I'm going to challenge this, though, from a readability
Okay.
standpoint. If you stay with the defaults and watch an email where it first starts to fade, just start to slightly slide it down is way higher than it is when you turn reduced transparency on. I mean, I'm talking almost I'd say 3/4 of an inch up that I can see that it's starting to fade already. So the thing I might still wanna look at, which is on screen, not partially off screen, it's still completely on screen, is well, not completely, it's starting to fade already. Yeah, no, it's completely on screen.
So is it fading? Let's fade. It doesn't fade above the toolbar though.
Way above the toolbar. So I'm looking, maybe I'll have to do this off, I'm getting out a ruler.
Are you in an email message or on a message
No, I'm in
list?
the list of emails.
Okay.
Let's see. I'll do it in freedom units. Yeah, it's almost an inch up that it already starts to fade. I can see a
I'm
line
not
going
seeing
across
it.
the icon of the person who had written.
That's with reduced transparency off.
Correct.
Huh, I'm not
I
seeing
mean,
that.
it's really big. Well, maybe we can do a little screen share when we're done here and see whether I'm
Yeah.
hallucinating.
Huh. But regardless, where's the other one I've seen? Is it photos or calendar? Oh yeah, photos is the other one. So go in with reduced transparency on, go into photos, and you'll see how you've got a huge like toolbar at the top where it says library and the date and everything, and then again a huge toolbar at the bottom.
Mhm.
Um, it just feels like Apple's using a lot of space,
Ye
and which they can do if if you're using the transparency because the transparency is sort of not obviously it's not hiding anything from you. And so you end up with this sort of unbalanced approach where there's a lot of white space at the very top and a lot of white space at the very bottom. And then as soon as you get below to the visible parts, it cuts immediately.
Yeah, I'm still, I wonder if I have some other settings still on because 'cause I'm still seeing some fading out much, much earlier. I think it's illusory that you feel like you've lost space, but you aren't actually losing more usable
Oh,
space.
yeah, yeah. No, you're not losing any space. It's more that the toolbar becomes, I would say, a larger portion. It takes it because you can't see anything else, the toolbar feels like it's taking much more of the interface. My
Okay.
suspicion is
Yeah.
the spacing is different because Apple is making different assumptions. That
Right.
if you can't see through the toolbar, you're gonna as a designer, you're going to make that toolbar take up just the amount of space it needs to work right and look good. Whereas Apple's not making that distinction when they're assuming you could have transparency.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But it is odd that it's more illusion than reality
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah, yeah. So in any event, so it's worth turning on reduced transparency and trying it, but, you may find a couple of places where it looks a little horsey.
Okay.
With watchOS, I've left increased contrast turned on.
Hmm.
It just makes things stand out a little bit better. And I
Okay.
find it very funny that, as we said, I kinda hate it in both macOS and iOS, but it's good on watchOS.
So odd. Okay.
And then in tvOS, I don't think there's any point in bothering with any of them. It's you know, it's
Maybe check out that focus thing or
yeah,
focus style.
that I am gonna look at that because I sometimes do have that problem where I'll move literally move the selection just to see what's selected because I can't tell.
Yep. I'll send you the
So I
article
think
on that. It's focus style high contrast versus default, and
right.
once I turned it on, I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna make sure that's always on."
Yeah. Right, right. So and turn off
Well,
autoplay video previews.
what I love about this is that you did all the work so we don't have to test everything and then giving us the recommendations, and then we can do the toggles ourselves and see what we like. This is great. As soon as
Well,
I saw this article, I was like, "This is what we're talking about this time."
yeah. So, I mean, I've written too, sort of criticisms about liquid glass. I think there are some very significant criticisms to be made. I do understand what Apple's trying to do in some cases. I think some of it is right, some of it is wrong. But it's a lot of people have just, think, "Oh, just turn off reduced transparency or turn on reduced transparency." But I think it's not as simple as just that, right? There is more going on and, even just telling people what it is, like, this is so you can actually go through and you're like, "Oh, wow, I really don't like increased contrast on the iPhone or on the Mac," you know? Now you know. You don't have to wonder what it's doing, or what it might have other effects. So that was why I was happy to do this, even if it did mean 4,000 screenshots. Alright.
That was a, yeoman's work you did there. I'm really impressed. Like I said, I love making me a screenshot, but man, this would have taken months to get it done this well. This is fantastic.
Back in the day when we used to have magazines, Macworld, Mac User, every now and then I would end up with an article like, "Compare these 7 email clients."
Oh, jeez.
And these articles, they make you wanna kill yourself. I mean, they're just so much work, and no
When you
one
get them
does them
done
anymore.
well, though, it's really gratifying, but
That was just it, is just like, you put in a ton of work because they were paying a decent amount of money, and you got a great article out of it, and the problem is in sort of the modern world, it's just so hard to get up the kind of the initiative to like, "Okay, this is going to be, the next 10 hours of my life." You know?
I think, you're walking a little bit of a mile in my shoes when I do the screencast online
Yes.
tutorials, because like, what you can't allow to happen is nothing can change. You can't be slightly scrolled in the like, when you stop and you go have lunch and you come back, if something moves slightly, you're dead. You don't wanna have 48 page curls while you're doing it going, "Oh, sorry, I screwed that all up," it's really hard to keep things consistent, Windows in the same place. That's kinda why I like doing iOS better than macOS, because things don't move around as much. It's a little easier to
Right.
keep them stable.
Right, right, yeah, you can really hold the interface in kind of the same I'm in this screen is the same, so,
Hold the line.
um yeah, right, right. No, and I mean, yeah, it was just as I said, doing this kind of stuff it is rewarding when people, say, "Oh, now I understand what people are talking about, and now I understand
Right.
how I can figure it out for myself."
Yeah, this is fantastic. This is a really, really good resource. Of course, there will be a link in the show notes to tidbits.com and the article about taming liquid glass. And you guys should all sign up for the newsletter, which is getting tidbits delivered to you, which is how I always remember to read it. Thank you so much for coming,
Every Monday
Adam.
night.
Oh, is that when it is? It's Monday night. I hadn't figured that out yet. I get the notification. It works.
Just
All
appears.
all right. Well, thanks for joining us again. I love having you on the show as always.
Indeed. Thanks for having me.
Well, after Adam and I were done recording, we did do a screen share where I showed him what I was seeing in email where I was saying that it was getting blurry quite a ways up. It turns out what I'm seeing is not what Adam is seeing. So we think there was just a bug going on with that. So we did confirm that was a bug. You know, I did a lot of editing on this particular episode because we were so excited. We kept talking over each other. And so I tried to cut out as much of it as I could. But what really struck me when I was doing the editing was how joyful we are together when we're talking. I mean, the number of times we giggle about something super dirty is hilarious. Anyway, it was a funny way to actually enjoy the episode to do the editing. But as always, I had such a great time with Adam. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Chit Chat Across the Pond. Did you notice there weren't any ads in the show? That's because this show is not ad-supported. It's supported by you. If you learned something or maybe you were just entertained, consider contributing to the Podfeed podcast. You can do that by going over to podfeed.com and look for the big red button that says Support the Show. When you click that button, you're going to find different ways to contribute. You can donate one time through the big Donate button with a credit card or Apple Pay, or you can use PayPal. If you want to make a recurring contribution, click the Patreon button. Keep in mind, I don't charge Patreon for Chit Chat Across the Pond or Programming by Stealth episodes, just once a month for the NosillaCast. That keeps it simple. If you want to contact me for any reason, you can email me at allison@podfeed.com, and you can follow me on Mastodon at podfeed.com/mastodon. Maybe you want to talk to other Nosilla castaways? You can do that in our Slack group at podfeed.com/Slack. Thanks for listening, and stay subscribed.